All right, welcome back. And Melitta Ngalonkulu from the Money Desk joins us now for an update. And the big story, Melitta, is Eskom once again. Fortunately, the lights are still on, but the lights are not coming on for them in as far as basically what they wanted, exemptions from the Environmental Air Quality Control Agency. That's been declined. They were applying for about 16 power stations. But what are the implications for you and I?
Well, Tulas, it's actually quite I don't know how to put it, but devastating, bad news or sad news, especially for our economy that's in such a dire state. But they actually have been not granted or denied the license or permission basically to continue with the emissions over the regulated amount. So while South Africa's National Air Quality Office has basically denied Eskom an exemption from emitting pollutants at some of its major power stations, Eskom applied to be exempted from the minimum emissions toolers regulations at 16 of its power stations, as you have mentioned earlier. As you look, if you can actually just see behind me, you actually see that it's actually been declined. It can no longer actually continue with what it's been doing. So some of the compliance postponements to lose that were granted, but some of them were actually not. So authorities actually are chiefly concerned about Eskom's sulfur dioxide output. Eskom had for some time tried to change emission limits for its power stations. At the moment, Medupi Tulis is throwing out about 7 times more sulfur dioxide than it is actually allowed.
Yeah, so that's for those who did chemistry in high school and those who were fortunate enough to continue with it beyond high school. The main concern there being sulfur dioxide, and they wanted to be given exemptions so that they don't have to comply, not yet at least, to the air quality standards that have been set by the Department of Environmental Affairs. So what happens from here on in then?
So what Eskom is saying that it's now legally obliged to shut down about 1/3 of its generating capacity, which is about 16,000 megawatts. So for Eskom to comply with the minimum emission standards, it means that it will actually cost it about 300 billion rand. 300 billion rand to less. And for Eskom to actually comply, it also said that it stresses that the enormous spend will not bring any capacity to the new grid, which is actually what we see here. And that should it actually have to execute all of these compliance measures, it will have to hike up electricity prices by about 10%. So talks are actually still continuing to less at this point.
So what basically they're saying to us now, what Eskom is saying, we asked to be exempted from compliance with these emissions standards. They said no, they being the Department of Environmental Affairs and the relevant agency. For us to be able to do that, we will need 300 billion rand. And from that 300 billion rand, we won't be adding anything.
No,
to the grid.
No capacity to the grid.
We might have to tax you even more. We might have to add 10% to your tariffs.
So that just means that companies, households will just continue having to cough up more money from the pockets.
Wow. So how are the markets looking this afternoon?
So the local markets are in the green today. Mining, resource shares are actually up, and this is despite its global peers rather being in the mix, as economic risks from the COVID-19 Omicron strain and central banks globally have elevated, or there are fears that they would elevate inflation.